in the Bahamas. Now, an astute businessman and attorney at law, he's established himself with deep entrepreneurial roots and long-standing connection with the Bahamian private sector. And he's coming to share some perspectives with us. So please, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for him. Make him feel welcome as he comes to the lectern.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the organizers of the event for the invitation and also congratulate CANTO on its 41st conference. Last year at the 40th annual CANTO conference held in Nassau, our Prime Minister Philip Davis spoke about, in part, the digital colonization of the Caribbean. Today, I want to explore who holds the keys of our digital revolution, who should hold them, and what can we do to protect ourselves from the digital colonization he spoke about while also preserving our sovereignty. Every system of domination first asks to be mistaken for inevitability. The plantation called itself progress. The empire called itself civilization. Economic dependency was described as the natural order of trade. In every age, power has tried to conceal political choices inside the language of necessity. History has taught us this is how the world works. Small societies often feel they must accept the terms set by large ones. Today, we hear a new vocabulary of inevitability. Data must flow. Platforms must scale. Algorithms are too complex to own and govern. Infrastructure is too expensive to own. Artificial intelligence will be built by a few powers, and small states must be grateful merely to use it. Now think for a second what is being asked of us. We are being asked to believe because we cannot build everything, we should control nothing. That because the service is convenient, dependence on it is harmless. That because technology crosses borders, public authority must step aside. And that because we are small, accepting someone else's terms is masked as reality. We use these systems every day. It is evidence of how deeply the dependency already runs. And I'm not saying that the Caribbean should unplug from the world, but I am saying we shouldn't confuse with being plugged in with having power. The Caribbean is entering the digital age through an architecture that risks reproducing the central logic of the colonial age: extraction without ownership, participation without power, and dependence presented as development. I am describing a construct where digital colonization does not require a foreign flag over Government House. It requires only an arrangement in which Caribbean people generate the data, Caribbean governments purchase the systems, Caribbean governments and consumers pay the subscriptions, and Caribbean lands and energy host the infrastructure, while intelligence, intellectual property, profits, and governing authority reside and accumulate elsewhere. Value flows outward, rules flow inward. That is the structure. And history has taught us to judge a structure not by the language used to market it, but by the distribution of power it produces. The colonial economy did not lack activity. Land was productive, ports were busy, and ships were full. But the activity was organized around someone else's development, finance, ownership, processing, and the rules were made elsewhere. The colony participated intensely, but remained subordinate. That distinction matters now. A society can have fiber beneath every road, cloud accounts in every ministry, and artificial intelligence in every business, yet remain digitally dependent. Digital consumption is not digital sovereignty. Connectivity is not capability, hosting is not ownership, and dependence does not become development merely because dependency is fast. Digital sovereignty is the ability to own, combined with the power to know, to choose, to refuse, and to recover information. Where exactly does this information reside? Who can inspect it? Who holds the encryption keys? Which country's laws can compel its disclosure? If the price doubles, can we move? If the provider withdraws, can we continue? If a hurricane cuts the cable tomorrow, how long before the state can function again? The uncertainty in answering these questions requires reflection and focus. If we cannot audit a critical system, replace its provider, and keep essential services running after disruption, then sovereignty exists only in our anthem, but not in our architecture. We occupy the house, we pay for the house, we may even have built the house, but someone else holds the keys. Nowhere is this clearer than the debate over data centers. Look closely at what is being asked of us. After the concessions are counted, electricity is supplied, what capability, ownership, resilience, tax revenue, and recurring value will remain with us? Should we give land, provide power, supply the water, build the road, grant the concessions, and then pay rent to use services generated by our own resources while the knowledge and profit leave our shores? The decisions we make today will determine whether this is truly a digital transformation or simply an extraction agreement with a different branding. Being a small state is not a decisive fact. Fragmentation is, and fragmentation is a political choice. The Barbadian poet Camus Brathwaite described the historical, cultural, and ancestral bond of the Caribbean in a profound statement, and I quote, "The unity is submarine." It reminds us that oceans doesn't divide or isolate us, but it's an underwater bridge by which our naval strings are inextricably tied. Digitally, our traffic moves through the same submarine cables. Our economies run on the same networks. Our vulnerabilities cross borders in milliseconds. A cyber attack does not respect the border between us. Neither does an algorithm. There is sufficient evidence that when the Caribbean acts in unity, we can negotiate successful outcomes. Alone, each island approaches a platform as a customer. Together, we approach it as a market. Alone, each government bargains for a facility. Together, we bargain for an ecosystem. Alone, we ask for access. Together, we require reciprocal agreements. Sovereignty doesn't mean keeping every bite at home. This is an expensive and dangerous proposition in a hurricane-prone region. We should not confuse sovereignty with our geographical reality. Encrypted backups abroad may remain under Caribbean authority if treaty, design, and operational control make that authority real. Data embassies offer precisely this possibility. Caribbean-controlled systems distributed across our islands with protected backups beyond the main hurricane zone. In 2018, Estonia launched the first data embassy in Luxembourg under a Tier 4 level security, the highest level for data security. So how should we move forward, and what are suggested next steps? First, the Caribbean should establish a Caribbean Digital Sovereignty Compact, a regional floor for data center incentives, resource obligations, cybersecurity, data protection, government cloud contracts, portability, and disaster recovery. No investor should be able to play one Caribbean country against the other for strategic resources. Second, build a federated Caribbean cloud and compute network. Resilient nodes across several islands linked by diverse cable network hardware, powered by additional renewable generation, defended through shared cybersecurity capability, and connected through treaty-protected protocols and backups. Our risks will be distributed, and our sovereignty should be too. Third, treat every major technology contract for what it is, a possible threat to our Constitution and our sovereignty. It decides who may know, who may act, who bears the risk, and who can leave. Public contracts must therefore require open standards, usable data exports, independent audits, Caribbean-controlled encryption, exit rights, and knowledge transfer. Public money must purchase public capability. Fourth, govern Caribbean data as an economic, cultural, and national security asset. Our health records, agricultural knowledge, speech patterns, music, archives, and images are not inert material waiting to become someone else's proprietary intelligence. If our collective life improves a commercial model, the Caribbean must benefit from the value chain. This is more urgent in the age of artificial intelligence. How are these AI systems trained? They learn from what they are fed, vast collections of text, sound, and images shaped by reviewers following guidelines written elsewhere. Much of what these systems know about us was written by others. So when our children put a question into a machine and it answers with confidence, how do we know that our culture, our values, and our histories are being translated in our voice and not merely summarized by someone else's? That is why systems trained elsewhere can misunderstand our accents, erase our histories, and reproduce assumptions we did not choose. We should use these global tools, but we must also build Caribbean data sets, education standards, models, and research institutions. We must be authors of technology, not merely subjects inside it. Artificial intelligence has also changed the security question, and no industry sits closest to it than the one gathered in this room. The same tools that draft our documents can clone a voice, forge an official's words, and turn phishing into something fluent, personal, and relentless, probing networks around the clock for one unlocked door. Our region has already felt it. Government systems locked by ransomware, telecommunications providers breached, citizens' data leaked. So, how do we protect ourselves? How do we protect our networks? You in the room run the networks the region lives on. You are our first line of defense. Pool the threat intelligence, share the monitoring and response, set common standards for critical infrastructure, and put artificial to work on defense under our control at machine speed. It is not enough to ask who holds the keys. We must be able to change the locks. Finally, invest in people who make sovereignty real. Engineers, artificial intelligence and cybersecurity specialists, data stewards, lawyers, regulators, economists, and public officials able to interrogate a contract or an algorithm, and when necessary, say no, and give our best and brightest a reason to build it home. A Caribbean artificial intelligence lab owned by the region, training models on our own languages, our archives, and our history on compute we control. We do not wait for capability before negotiating. Every negotiation must build capability. This is the post-colonial approach the digital age requires. Post-colonial does not mean anti-foreign, it means anti-subordination. It does not mean rejecting capital. It means disciplining capital towards sustainable development in our national and regional interests. It does not mean closing the Caribbean. It means opening the Caribbean on terms that preserve our ability to choose. Our history should make us vigilant and cautious. An unintended colonization will return if we repeat foreign control of intellectual assets and culture, subsidized local inputs, fragmented bargaining, imported services, and exported value. When we gained political independence, we acquired flags, parliaments, constitutions, and seats among nations. Those achievements were hard-fought and profound. But sovereignty was never fixed in the annals of time. Power moves. Each generation must identify where it has moved and build institutions capable of meeting it there. In our generation, power is moving into code, compute, cloud, data, algorithms, standards, and infrastructure. The next colonial office may have no building in our capital. It may exist in a platform's term of service. The next governor may never ride by ship. Authority may be exercised through an algorithm we cannot inspect, a cloud we cannot leave, or an account that can be switched off without appeal. The decree may come as a software update. So we must consider what is truly being asked of us. We may think we are being merely asked to adopt new tools, but often we are quietly being asked to place part of our public authority inside systems we do not govern. Once we see that clearly, this ceases to be a narrow conversation about technology. It becomes a conversation about our sovereignty. We need to understand this moment without confusing connection with control, consumption with capability, hosting with ownership, or investment with development. The choice is not between isolation and dependency. The better course is partnership with agency. The truth beneath the water remains. Our unity is submarine. Our leverage is regional. And our sovereignty must be built together. The issue before us is no longer whether the Caribbean will become digital. It will. The issue is who in the digital Caribbean will hold the keys and whether the Caribbean truly remains sovereign. And that question will not wait. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, in his 1963 March on Washington speech, coined the phrase, the fierce urgency of now. This is where we are. 3 weeks from now, from September 1st to the 4th, the world gathers in Nassau for the World Telecommunications and ICT Policy Forum. The first time this forum comes to the Caribbean.